All right, everyone, welcome back into another NFL DFS video. Going to be breaking down this Thursday night showdown between the New York Giants and the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's go ahead and get into it. So as always, you guys know I like to start off with a quick game preview of this game. So let's go ahead and start there. Looking at the game total, this is actually a very low-scoring game. We know that the Eagles' offensive line has really not played all that well, and I think that's really kind of dictating the game total here because they are going to be 7-point favorites in this game. The Eagles' defense has been solid as well, but really my point is with the Eagles' O-line really not playing all that well, Vegas is expecting this to be a low-scoring game, okay? It's also a game in which, again, the Eagles are like 7-point favorites, 7.5-point favorites on average as well. So very interesting there in that regard. So for building purposes, just right out the bat, it does seem like this could end up being, one, a kicker slate slightly, but also it's going to be a slate where we're probably targeting a DST. That DST would probably end up being the Eagles. But really, that to me reads like the Giants DST is also going to be in play somewhat. Now, we also have to talk about the injury situations for the Giants here, guys. So the Giants are going to be pretty thin in this game kind of already, but they also are getting someone back in this game as well. And let's kind of start there. So Cam Skattebo is going to be priced up a decent amount. And the question becomes, how much is he really going to end up playing in this game? Okay, so we got to remember in week 3, when Cam Skattebo took over for an injured Tyrone Tracy Jr., Tracy was the starter, and Tracy looked good in that game there as well. And if you kind of look at some other players being out in this game, obviously they're already without Neighbors and already without Darius Slayton as well in this game. To me, that actually leads me to believe that Tracy is probably going to be the more valuable GPP asset. And I do make that distinction, GPP asset, because I do think Skattebo's going to have a big enough workload where we can kind of just trust him overall. But I think this is going to be more of an RB split. It already was an RB split. Like we had Devin Singletary getting about 35 to 39% of the snaps already. It was already like a 60-40 split regardless of really who the starting running back was. I could just end up seeing this being more of a 50-50 split, where especially because of the injuries that they've had at receiver, we could see Tracy and Skattebo maybe be on the field together as well. And so that's kind of the issue that we have in the slate. It's really a guessing game as to which one's going to be involved in the receiving game, but it could end up being both of them. The answer could end up being both of them are going to be involved in the receiving game. So I think both players are going to firmly be in play for us here, guys. So really, whichever one you want to end up on, that's fine. But obviously, the big news here is going to be the fact that Slayton is also out in this game. So with Slayton out, I do think we're going to see a very high target share here for Wendell Robinson, and he's going to be someone that I do think we should be targeting a lot in DFS lineups. The question is, can we get away with playing him in the captain spot? Again, they are 7-point dogs. It is a game that is going to be a lower scoring game. We don't like that part of it. But at the same time, I think given the game script where they're playing from behind, Robinson probably does end up being a pretty safe play for us. Now, it is also worth calling out just how much the Giants were running out 12 personnel. They ran about 40% last week, which was a lot. Okay, you look at the tight end splits. Theo Johnson played 81% of the snaps. Okay, obviously ended up having 7 targets in that game, so very good stuff there for him. But we also saw 2 other tight ends play a decent amount. Chris Manhertz ended up playing 11% of the snaps, which overall not too much, but that just further echoes the kind of personnel that they're running out, just a lot of 2 tight end sets. And we did see Dan Bellinger end up playing 53% of the snaps. Now, he only participated in 29% of the routes. Don't love that. But he did end up having 4 targets in those on those routes. So that is definitely worth noting. And I do think as long as the game is close, and again, if it is going to be this lowest scoring game, it should stay close enough for long enough. Even if with it being a 7-point spread, I do think we're going to see a lot of 2 tight end sets. So he ends up being a value play that we can get to in need. But really, I think we got to just look at some of the other receivers here. So again, with the injuries, I do think we can expect Jalen Hyatt to kind of just step up into the Darius Slayton role. Hyatt has been an interesting player. He was someone that got a lot of hype out of camp here for the Giants. He is someone I expect to have a good game in this game somewhat. Like he ended up with 3 targets last week, guys, 46% of the snaps. But also, do not forget, Collins is someone that also kind of was impressive throughout the preseason throughout this last preseason. Ended up making a big play in week 1 to the point where you kind of thought about potentially being on him as a super, super deep sleeper. Someone to pay attention to that if the opportunity presented itself, he'd be someone we're thinking about. And so again, in a negative game script, I think we want to almost be setting a rule where we're getting to at least one of Daniel Bellinger, Collins, or Hyatt. Telling you guys which one to be on. that's a guessing game, but I do think that ends up being a very strong route to go DFS-wise, because they all should be on the field a decent amount, again, especially if they're playing from behind. And we should talk about Jackson Dart as well. So kind of a disappointing game last week, although DFS-wise, not really. Okay, he's going to rush the football a lot. We know that. And that should raise his floor to the point where we are okay getting to him. And just while we're at it, guys, I got to say, pretty darn crazy that the Cleveland Browns did not trade for either Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston. Okay, they end up going with Joe Flacco, which was strange because he has played worse than Jake Browning. Now, I get that just a fresh change of face is like a good thing for them. But you have the problems, and I know this is not directly in regards to this game, but the problem with the Browns was not Jake Browning for the first 2.5 games. And then we saw last week, he was definitely the problem. Okay, don't get me wrong. Last week, definitely the problem. But the problems that you have are going to be further heightened by having Joe Burrow there, most likely. The Bengals were very much playing not inspired football. And again, the point I'm bringing up here is obviously that it was super strange for them to not trade for Winston or Wilson. I'm actually kind of curious as to your guys' thoughts on that as well. Like, to me, it seemed like almost that would have been a slam dunk to get one of those two. Very strange there. And maybe, honestly, it is a little bit due to the playing style of Jackson Dart, where he is going to rush the football a lot to the point where they're like, we want to keep them. We want to keep our quarterbacks just in case. And Wilson's still old too. Maybe that's part of it. All right, so now let's go ahead and get into the Eagles, guys. And I will say Barkley probably is the best captain play. And I hesitate to say that because we do see kind of his workload has not been elite there. What's weird is at the start of the game, he was someone that they're trying to get the football to in that game. And then it's almost like they have too many mouths to feed and they're just kind of, I don't really, it's weird. It's just weird stuff that's been going on there, obviously. They kind of had control of that game against Denver. Really never seemed like they were going to lose that game. Whereas in some of the other games, you could argue kind of the opposite. Like Dallas, they should have lost. KC probably could have lost. The Rams, they definitely should have lost. And so it just kind of seemed like one of those games where they had what was coming to them, if that makes sense, where you kind of play sloppy football and eventually that's going to lead to a loss. But I also kind of feel like that's going to be a wake-up call for them, and they're just going to force feed their studs. I think we could have seen Barkley just get a ton of work in this game, and he draws a very good matchup against the Giants. Obviously, if it's going to be a low-scoring game, that probably means that someone like Barkley is going to get a lot of work in this game. Now, it is worth calling out, guys. RB2-wise, we did see Will Shipley actually get a decent amount of work, 15% of the snaps. Not too much production, but just interesting to know because A.J. Dillon ended up getting also about 15% of the snaps. So definitely a clear workload split there. We don't want to be in either of them, though, as a result. So the annoying part for like just fantasy football and season-long purposes for everyone has been Dallas Goedert going off because he has not been getting a lot. I mean, 9 targets last week was great, but 3 receptions, 16 yards, ended up with a touchdown. 2 weeks ago, guys, 4 targets, 2 touchdowns. 3 weeks ago, 2 targets, 1 touchdown. And then week 1 against Dallas, where we just figured out Dallas is a terrible defense, 7 targets, had a pretty good game there. So definitely strange there. And you would almost imagine that his production is going to go down in this game, especially given the matchup with the Giants, where they are pretty good stopping opposing quarterbacks. So that leads me to believe that A.J. Brown, again, very frustrated. I do think that he is going to be someone that gets fed. He is still getting a lot of work. Ended up with 8 targets last week, and Devonta Smith. The issue with both of those two is that what is the logic behind playing both of them? That does become more difficult because if we're playing both of them, then we're probably not ending up on Saquon Barkley because we probably have to play Jalen Hurts. If we're playing both of A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, we can't get away with also playing Saquon Barkley, especially in the captain spot. So that's the difficult part about the slate. That's the decisions that we have to make on the slate. And so we almost have to go with one of them because I do think we want to begin to Jalen Hurts. And then you guys start to see the dilemma that we are in for this slate. The slate starts to become very thin there. And so that is where we almost have to back engineer our lineups here, guys. And as I mentioned, it's not that pretty when we do it because the values that we have to go to, we don't love. Now, I will say Jahan Dotson's a little bit interesting, getting 71% of the snaps, 77% of the routes. That's great. But again, it's really Barkley, Smith, Green in this game. Maybe Goddard continues it. I doubt it. And Hurts. I think we want to try to get to 3 of them. And how do we go about doing that? That's the difficult part. And so my strategy is going to be kind of an ugly one. I will admit that. Okay. But I do think it's going to be tough to make a cash build, a single entry build. And so what I want to do on this slate is kind of go back to what I said earlier, where we're either playing Hyatt or Collins in a build. Maybe we could play both of them, but I kind of think we want to play one of them in the captain spot. They're both more of deep ball threats. Like Wendell Robinson is going to have a high floor. Theo Johnson probably going to have a decent floor as well. But I do think this is kind of like Tyquan Thornton. That we're just going to call it the Tyquan Thornton role, where you know he's going to get air yards, Tyquan Thornton, and so he becomes appealing as a captain's only play, because if he hits on a touchdown, that's appealing. That's kind of what we're looking like with Collins and Hyatt here, where we're just looking for that one deep ball catch that turns, that ends up being a 13-point DFS play for us. And if that's in the captain spot, that's going to end up being huge, because then we can also fit in the other studs on the slate. And so when we do that, it becomes a little bit easier to kind of go about navigating this slate. Not completely easy, but better. And so obviously if we're playing Collins there, then we're going to get to Dart. And then we're probably just going with like Bellinger in this specific build. Like, it's a little bit ugly, but you guys get the point of that. It's not going to be pretty, but that's the cost of trying to get Barkley, Brown, and Hurts into a build with, probably Jackson Dart as well. And I must say, guys, this lineup combination is a little bit painful. I would actually probably like this lineup a lot more, just because we're getting two receivers rather than a backup tight end to close out the build. $100 off, so as always, a little slow clap for the DK Pricer on the slate. But that's enough of kind of my thoughts. Let's go and see what the 9-to-5 lineup builder is telling us is the best approach to go with in this game. And guys, just early ownerships, let's just take a peek at that. This will change as it progresses, but we'll just take a peek here. So I doubt Jake Elliott's going to end up being 90% owned, just as an FYI. That will probably change here. But then we're seeing Hurts, Barkley, Dart. That makes sense. People are kind of splitting between Brown and Smith. That also makes sense as well. Giants kicker is pretty low, but no one is really getting to the Giants receivers in the capacity that I just suggested, which again, I do think that's going to end up being a pretty sharp edge. Hopefully, obviously, fingers crossed there. But let's just go ahead and do a lineup here. We'll do 5 lineups as we typically do. Nothing too crazy here. Again, we could end up doing that rule where we have Bellinger, Hyatt, or Collins in a build together, because those are the best values. But let's just see what this ends up spitting out to us just in general. And yes, we do need to include the captain in there. Put that back in. Now we can run. Let's see here. So Saquon captain, Robinson, Collins, Humphrey, Jordan. I don't hate that. Like, he could end up playing. Again, if this game ends up being a blowout, that could end up working. And that's kind of what the lineup is trying to tell us to do there. Let's just go ahead and zero out any plays that are not getting projections as well, just to see what this does instead. Let's see here. Let's do a max. I'm just going to click them off just to see what it spits out to us instead here. Then we'll click run again and just see what it's trying. Okay, so it is very much trying to go to a min price play. Kylan Granson's going to get some work. I don't mind that. Let's see here. This lineup I don't mind, but Giants DST with Saquon, I don't like that as well. So it is a very interesting slate. It's going to be tough to kind of manipulate the builds. And that, again, that makes it interesting for GPPs, right? It's going to be tough to make a good build, and that's kind of the appealing thing of a slate like this. And then I did just go ahead and run some more. I want to see what it tell us to do if we told it we wanted Wendell Robinson in our captain spot. And this isn't a terrible build right here, guys, where it's Robinson, Hurts, Brown, Goddard, Theo Johnson. I don't mind that. Maybe we could switch off of Jake Elliott instead. Maybe go to Eagles DST instead. I think that ends up being a little bit of a better lineup here. But again, difficult slate, right? So fun slate though as well. But that's going to do it for this video, guys. Appreciate you guys watching. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel as well. If you guys would like access to the NFL DFS lineup builder, the NFL DFS cheat sheet, all the prop tools and fantasy golf tools, they're all available for a low monthly cost of $10 a month. Appreciate you guys being here. Good luck. And as always, let's keep cashing.